Dear participants, dear guests, dear audience, let me welcome you to the Inclusion and Diversity Forum 2021. This is a great moment because our forum will be all about sharing good practices in the field of inclusion and diversity. It will also be a lot about celebrating the past achievements. Here, within the next days, we will launch the new inclusion and diversity strategy by really looking into its meaning, its potential, what does it bring? And finally, we will also focus on preparing ourselves and our resilience for the future. My name is Simona. I'm one of your facilitators. And with me is
Kalle. Really nice to meet you all. The ID Forum 2021 will be 3 days of online and offline program, gathering of participants from across Europe here in Oostende, Belgium, joined by online group of 25 people, followed by interested audience via live stream, and I've just heard that there is more people also joining us.
It is a very important moment, as I said before, to celebrate the past achievements. To celebrate what the wider European youth work community, with support from institutions and different stakeholders, achieved in the last decade. And with this achievement, we are, all of us in the sector, really making sure that the voices of those at the margin, those most vulnerable and excluded, are heard, put at the center, and actually really included.
In the next days, we will also approach current challenges. We will look at possible future scenarios, and we will work together towards a more resilient, more reflected, and, above all, more inclusive youth work practice.
And we could have not have come this far without certain processes being in place, without certain people and support. So, without further ado, allow me to pass the floor to Sophia Eriksson Waterschoot, the Director of the Youth Education and Erasmus Plus unit from the European Commission. Director, the floor for a welcome is yours.
This introduction, and it's really nice to see you in live, although I'm myself virtual here, but it's nice to see that you are actually gathering. I hear that it's very windy and a bit rainy perhaps. Well, I can tell you it's definitely very rainy as well in Brussels, but I'm sure this is just a minor nuisance, and you will have a lovely 3 days together discussing this important topic of inclusion and diversity. So thank you so much for the organizers to making this happen, and thanks of course also to the city of Oostende for the opportunity to be here, and especially for myself to be here in the beginning of this forum. Now, when it comes to making Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps programs more inclusive and more diverse, you who have been part of this journey together with us in the Commission, you know it has been a high, actually I would say the highest priority throughout the whole process. And we tried to do it from the beginning in a so-called co-creative way, and really think every single step of the preparation of the new programs, how does this measure, how does this new way of thinking around the program make the program more inclusive? It was really a guiding principle from the start of the preparation. And we are here now with brand new programs being implemented. So it's really an important point in time that we are gathering. Now let's maybe move a few steps back, because we are not doing this only because we know it's important, and we know that, and I know you are really also not only the national agencies, but also many practitioners there, and we know this is an important task. But what is good to know, and perhaps be reminded now when you're gathering and discussing these 3 days, is that it has a full support from the highest political level. And I'm thinking here of what the heads of state did back in 2017, in fact. First of all, they proclaimed the so-called European Pillar of Social Rights. And with this principle 1 of this pillar, it refers directly to the right to quality and inclusive education, training, and lifelong learning. So we knew already by then that the program had to deliver on this promise, but it didn't stop there. When the heads of state met in December the same year and proclaimed a number of objectives for a European education area, actually heads of state or government, they called explicitly upon the member states, the council and the commission to step up mobility and exchanges and make or prepare a substantially strengthened, inclusive and extended Erasmus Plus program. And when the Commission, the current Commission President von der Leyen, held her first speech at the European Parliament about her political priorities, she highlighted her ambition here that we need equality for all and equality in all of its senses. And improving access to education opportunities was one of those specific aspects that she underlined. So just to say that our direction was clear and fully supported from the highest political level. Now, the main objective of these efforts for our program is really about making many more people to have a learning experience abroad in another country, and in particular to make sure that there are more people who can have this experience, more people with fewer opportunities. And of course, people should be able to take part regardless of their background, their socioeconomic context, their physical, their mental or health condition. Now, evidence and research shows that the previous programs managed actually to reach out quite well already to the number of people with fewer opportunities. And that's already a very good result that I think we can collectively be proud of. But we have to acknowledge that it's not enough and more can be done to reach out to an even greater number of people and giving these opportunities to many more, and look at those barriers or obstacles that are still there and try to tackle them. So how do we ensure this greater inclusiveness in practice? Well, as we started to prepare the programs, we listened to the needs from the ground and we try to analyze the possibilities that we could offer under the umbrella of the two programs of Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. And we could see that the programs needed to be more open to different target groups of participants, first of all, and that meant, for example, to also expand the possibilities for other types of target groups. And that's why we opened up possibilities for mobility of school pupils and for mobility for adults under the mobility actions, and as well providing more flexible learning formats and try to focus much more on the learning needs in this mobility period. Of course, we all know that financial support is absolutely key, but we have also seen that that's actually not enough, and a number of other elements also needs to be fostered. And we have to look at really the design of the action. Are they accessible to the target groups we are looking for? And try to look into the reinforced support for those where we know that there are big obstacles to make a mobility. So look at, for example, in the Discover EU action, which is new for the new Erasmus Plus program. We have piloted this for a few years, but now when this is part of Erasmus Plus, we have launched a so-called inclusion action within Discover EU to really encourage young people with fewer opportunities to be able to participate and also learn about the EU by traveling by train. And here we see the need of organizations to help and support to make it happen, because it is not enough with just bringing additional outreach or financial support. We need strong multipliers. We need organizations that can help here. So in just a couple of months, actually, of implementation, well, soon a year, but we know that this year's program started very late because we had late agreement on budget and late part of the program. But still, I'm really happy that we have already managed to advance quite substantially on this key priority in the months that we have behind us of implementing the program. And I know this is thanks to the direct involvement of you, of national agencies, inclusion officers, of the organizations on the ground, of those who are really in the field. So I would like to give you a big thank you, actually, for already taking on this important challenge. So we need to count on your active role, your continued active role here, the efforts that you're doing in terms of the role of your organizations. It will not be possible simply to have a more inclusive program or more inclusive programs without this strong engagement with your side. And perhaps a moment to also highlight the importance of the engagement of small organizations and what we say sometimes like the newcomers, because we see that if we want to be serious of reaching out to people with fewer opportunities, we also have to make an effort that we are bringing in perhaps new organizations that have not yet benefited from the program. And thanks to the so-called action of small-scale partnerships, this is actually possible now in the new Erasmus Plus program. So we have to work together, and I'm sure these 3 days will help in identifying those obstacles that are still out there and help to guide also people with fewer opportunities that this is an opportunity for them. So I will stop perhaps my introductory remarks there and simply wish you now a great opportunity for having these 3 days in front of you to meet, discuss, and to exchange. And I truly hope that you will be able to share your best experiences like you all already have and been doing in the past, and be able perhaps to meet new partners for your projects and be inspired for further learning. Thank you.
Dear Director, thank you for those welcome words and an insight into this vast field of inclusion and diversity. Before we welcome next speakers, I would still like to ask you something, because today, our first day together will be about achievements and celebrating those. So looking back at the almost past decade of Erasmus Plus program, European Solidarity Corps now a few years, that we have at other European Commission programs, for you personally, do you have some achievement, something that you personally have encountered in the past years within the programs that you would like to emphasize here, something that you feel is relevant to say from your personal perspective, maybe to share with us?
Yes, now I would love to share that, and many of the participants in the room are much more, have a longer history knowing about what I will tell you, but simply when I entered into the field of the programs, I could see that there was a very strong, a very strong community in the youth field working on inclusion, and even having at the time a separate strategy, an inclusion and diversity strategy in the field of youth. And I could see that this was really the kind of operational means to make things happen through the organizations and the kind of methods. So for me, I saw this as an opportunity when we were preparing the new program, that we need a full inclusion and diversity strategy for the whole program. We can build on this excellent experience that we have in the youth field and try to cover all sectors of the program to really make it a strong a strong novelty. And what was good that we have, when we negotiated together with the European Parliament and the Council of the new program, we could see there was similar support from these institutions, which led us to go quite far. And we could, in the regulation itself, we have a full chapter on inclusion. And actually in this chapter, there are quite some important commitments made in terms of a framework for inclusion measures that should exist at European level, and also to translate this by the national agencies into inclusion plans. So I find this really an excellent example of that we can bring this experience to a broader setting. And I'm happy that you will be able to look at this inclusion framework, which is all fresh, a little bit more than a month, and you will be able to look at the different parts of it in your days today. I'm also happy to know that there's a lot of work, and we are trying to strengthen that as well in the cooperation between national agencies, and we have very good, of course, experience with the SALTO inclusion. And what I'm happy to announce here as well, that we would like to extend this SALTO inclusion not only for youth, but also go beyond that and have SALTO inclusion a real resource centers for inclusion in the fields of education and training. So I think with the inclusion framework, with our national action plans by national agencies, a number of additional support mechanisms that we have offered, and now also with the support work of the SALTOs, I think we have all the measures and all the preparations in our hands that will allow this program or these programs to become truly inclusive and diversity in the coming 7 years.
Thank you very much for sharing that achievement. Actually, it is the inclusion and diversity strategy is the main topic of our forum, so we will keep coming back to it throughout the days. Thank you very much also for that perspective. I think we all look forward to SALTOs having this greater role also outside of the youth field. Thank you very much, and now I would like to pass the floor to my colleague.
Thank you from my side also for your contribution. Next, we will have a greeting from the city of Oostende, welcoming Councillor Hina Bhatti, Councilor of Civil Affairs and Accessibility here in Oostende.
It's always a relief when we can take off our masks. Good morning, everyone. Dear Director from Youth and Education and Erasmus Plus of the European Commission, Mrs. Sophia Eriksson Waterschoot. Dear Director of JINT, SALTO IND, Koen Lambert. Dear guests of this ID forum, it's always nice to welcome people in Oostende, and you are here from different countries. It is a pleasure for me to be able to welcome you today. I am Hina Bhatti. I am alderman responsible for accessibility, and today I will introduce myself, introduce what we do in Oostende, and I hope you can learn from me a little bit, and I can learn from you today. Let me start by pointing out to you the fact that the building where we are standing right now has been built years ago. And at that time, no one was really concerned about the accessibility of our facilities and about inclusion. We have come a long way. This former Oostende's post office building operated between the 1950s until 1999, and it reopened in 2012 as a booming cultural center called the Grote Post. Since then, it has been hosting a number of events, including theater, comedy, and music. And this week, this will be the place to be for the next 3 days for this event that will focus on inclusion and diversity in a very broad sense. I am delighted to see all of you in Oostende, and once again, a very warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment that I became part of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in Oostende, there was no doubt that inclusion should be a point of attention. Even more, it should be one of our top priorities. Our main focus as a local authority, should be in finding and adopting inclusive solutions, which is exactly why this team appointed one alderman responsible for accessibility to keep an overview in all of our policies. It was quite a challenge and a real honor, which I accepted with gratitude. The past few years, Oostende has evolved into a very diverse city. We have more than 130 nationalities. We are a super diverse city. And every citizen of Oostende, regardless of their origin, their orientation, their religion, their physical disability, should be a full part of this society. For this is not a utopia. It is, however, a huge challenge in which we must be vigilant for pitfalls. One of the biggest challenges in this era is segregation. Larger communities becoming a separate community within our local society. It may feel comfortable for those larger groups in the short term, but we will not serve the society in a city in the longer term. And how we tackle this? We can do this in small actions, but also in long-term visions. For example, spatial planning and housing policy can bring a dynamic to your city that counters segregation. Boosting neglected neighborhoods. It attracts families who in their turn have an impact on people who are less fortunate. When you see children from diverse backgrounds playing together in the street, a lot can happen. You don't see those effects immediately, but it has an effect on long term. And in Oostende today, you can see enormous renovation movements, and the impact of this will go much further than a facade. Language is also a key. We have put a lot of effort into this. For example, we have this ABC by the Sea project, where the city, together with various partners, is setting up a language course for young new people. During vacation periods, they receive an intensive language course, and because we want to encourage their participation in education, in social, cultural, and sporting life. The city's socio-cultural offerings are also discussed here. Because after all, language opens doors, possibilities for networking, and of course, new jobs. We have this, we repeat it almost every day. We have to focus on what unites us and not on our differences. And our mayor, Bart Tommeling, he keeps emphasizing this. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your abilities are. It's our future together that counts. And I agree with him 100% in this. Key figures can play a role in all of this. Role models for children and young adults who believe that they do not count in this society. People with different backgrounds, people with a disability, people with a different orientation. We have to put the success stories in the spotlight. And there are plenty of them, but we need to do that more. It has been almost 3 years now that I am responsible for the field of people with disabilities. And I remember when I started 3 years ago, I have created ambassadors. I appointed 4 people with different disabilities, and I put them on the front. And I said, we will learn from these people. We will try to learn everyone that they are here, and they can teach us a lot about their daily life. They are worth their weight in gold for the implementation of my policy. The key word in living together is respect. We should have respect for each other, but also for our basic values and our standards. For example, there is no place in this society for people who do not respect equality between men and women. We do not have place in this society for people who do not respect LGBT rights. Inclusion means accessibility, and one of the tasks I have as an alderman is to make sure that the city is accessible for everyone. And this is why we have set up a contract with InterVZW. Inter is an organization, they advise local authorities in their accessibility strategy. So before we make any decision, we look ahead and we think about what will be the impact of this decision on policies we will make. What impact will it have on people with visible or invisible disabilities? Is our public access, is it possible for everyone? What about participating in events, in sport activities, in cultural activities? That's the main question. And it's the responsibility of this city and everyone who is working with us to make sure that there are no restrictions for everyone. We have also appointed an officer who is responsible for accessibility and who guards all these activities. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're getting there, we're slowly getting there. And during the last years, we have worked very hard. We made a partnership with Ithaca to give young people with restrictions a chance on the labor market. People with restrictions are individually coached for a job, and the city of Oostende tries their very best to offer them their job. We have started a body project for disabled people. We started this during the COVID situation, during the first lockdown. It was a period in which people with disabilities who already don't have a large network had to stay at home, became isolated. And that's when we thought, let's start a body project. Let's find people who go visit them at their homes and who can assist them and make sure that they don't get isolated, make sure it doesn't have a big impact on them. We have to make sure that those people are also taken care of. And at this moment, we have some buddy couples, and that has developed into real friendships. We provided special wheelchairs, we provided toilet and sanitary blocks at the beach. We have this organization, it's called Zonzeezorgelus. It's such a beautiful project. They make our beaches accessible. They make sure that when during the summer, people with physical disabilities can also enjoy the nice weather, the sun, the beach, and everything is accessible for them. And it was only open during the months of summer, but here in Oostende, we started a new project in which we said we should also make sure that during the colder months, when people would like to take a walk on the beach, we have these facilities for them. So that's also what we did here. And when I see people at the beach, one time I was there with my colleague, and we had. I just want to explain to you the impact of very small steps, what the impact you can have in the lives of individual people. I saw this lady, and I know her because when I was little, I lived next to her. She was my neighbor, and she was disabled. I saw her after more than 30 years, and I was there at the unit of Zonzeezorgelus, and she was there renting the wheelchair. And she said to me, it has been more than 20 years that I was able to come to the beach and individually by myself go into the sand and go until the water. Such a small thing we did, and it made such a big impact on in the life of one individual. We have a swimming pool, and we have a lot of accessibility. We made different accessibility interventions there to make sure that people with disabilities, they can also, go to the swimming pool and enjoy their swimming sessions. We try to make our sports offers as accessible as possible. So these are all things that we did during the past years, but there is a lot of work to be done. In the future, we have to work very hard. And I think one of the most important things that we have to do is we have to make sure, in the mentality of people, we have to make sure that it becomes, it should be an automatic. It shouldn't be a special intervention. It should be something you do automatically. That's what we try to do here in Oostende. We want to make our traffic lights more accessible. We want public transport to be more accessible. It's a huge challenge in Oostende. We have to work with different partners. It's not always as easy, but still we are trying our very best to do that. We have to make sure that our playgrounds, they are accessible for people, for children who are. For children with disabilities. And when I say disability, I mean it in the most broad sense. We have people with visible disabilities, we have people with invisible disabilities, we have people with intellectual disabilities, but they have so many talents in other fields. We're missing something as a society if we're not trying to discover those talents just by just by looking at focusing on that disability and just saying, okay, they're not of any value to us. So that's the mentality change we have to make here in Oostende. We have to make it everywhere. And I see a lot of young people. I was once also young and I went to these forums and I exchanged ideas and views, but maybe tomorrow you can also be somewhere in your country, and it doesn't matter on which level you are, but you can make a difference in whatever level you are. You can make a difference in an organization, you can make a difference in a local organization, you can make a difference in the city council, you can make a difference everywhere you go, you can make a difference in your street if you have a neighbor or somebody close to you. That's what you can do. So never underestimate the impact you have as an individual in the life of other people. I think I will end here.
That was really, impressive work what you do over here. I wanted to ask from you, Alderman, thinking of the idea here in Oostende, one thing to the end that resonates with you personally, how does Oostende live ID, inclusion diversity?
Well, I think I've said it. I think the biggest challenge we have as a local authority about accessibility is that it should become, we shouldn't, we shouldn't say how can we benefit from this? That's what we usually do. Before we make a decision, we don't really include those people. We shouldn't always be focused on the benefits. It just should be a decision. It should be an automatic decision you make in the life of people who are disabled. I think that's the biggest challenge we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we would like to invite now one more person to address us. I would like to invite Koen Lambert, the director of JINT. Dear director, the floor is yours for a welcome.
Thank you. And luckily getting rid of this face mask again. Let me first thank the director, Sophia Waterschoot, also for her inspiring words. And also Madam Alderman, thanks a lot for your very inspiring input in this at the start of this forum, and for the commitment that you show that on the local level to have this inclusive policies developing here in Oostende. Dear friends, dear colleagues of the European Commission and of the Flemish Department of Youth and Culture, dear colleagues from national agencies, friends of inclusion and diversity in the youth field, on behalf of JINT and also of the SALTO Resource Center, I'd like to welcome you in Oostende on my behalf, and happy to have this long-awaited Inclusion and Diversity Forum really taking place, still in the first year, so still at the beginning of a new program period of the EU youth programs. It's very nice to be back in Oostende. We have been here 2 years ago with another European event in the same building. It was in pre-COVID times, true. But we have very pleasant memories, so we were glad to be able to come back here. And thanks again, the City of Oostende, for your hospitality. Thanks also to all of you to be here, be it on the spot or online. In this sometimes difficult circumstances. We will do our best to make these 3 days alive and kicking with inspiring discussions and good practice exchange, background information, all in view of this successful implementation of the inclusion and diversity strategy of both Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. This forum is an important momentum, even in these difficult circumstances, or maybe just because of these circumstances, as we know that COVID-19, or should we call it COVID-21 from now on, as this COVID has not been very beneficial for many young people throughout the EU and beyond, and certainly not for those who already had fewer opportunities. We have brought together in the forum colleagues from national agencies of the programs, field workers, youth workers, experts of the youth work community, all active in the field of youth and working with and for young people, supporting them on their personal path to active citizenship, engagement, skills development, gaining language knowledge, living values and being European. The youth field is vast and very rich in experiences, and inclusive and diverse practices and objectives have been successfully integrated in the previous program generations over the past decades, because we have to look that long time ago. It's about decades. Inclusion and diversity have been, it was not perfect, but it has been successful features of the EU programs in the youth field. And looking at some figures, and yes, figures are important, and even when the saying goes that you can prove anything with them, we still have to look at them. And looking at some figures from the past 7 years, one of these figures is very striking. It says that more than 35% of all young people participating in projects like youth exchanges or volunteering or participating projects, more than 35% of the participants were young people with fewer opportunities. 35%. So even if you want to keep a big margin for errors, that is still a very good result in my opinion. And it is remarkable in two ways. This figure, one is very simple. It shows that young people with fewer opportunities are in the program. And this may sound very simple, but it isn't. It is very important, and we actually achieved to get those young people involved in mostly transnational learning experience, which they would never have had without the EU programs. And this result is, for a second reason, also remarkable, because with this figure, we have been able to show this achievement to the world, to policymakers, to the public, to ourselves. And this second achievement is almost as important as the first one, because it shows that we have achieved something, and that gives ourselves and all the actors involved in the youth programs the necessary confidence for future development. It is a stable basis for continuing our work in the same right direction and to create and obtain more support from decision makers to go further on that path. This result from the past 7 years has been achieved by hard work and engagement and commitment of many organizations and youth workers, young people and institutions in the youth work community from the local to national and European level. So it's not the European Commission or national agencies who have done the work on the field. It was this youth work community. The work of the Commission and the national agencies is something else. It's about making the appeal to the field. It's about creating conditions, not to mention funding, and setting standards for the programs and their actions. But in that large framework, an inclusion and diversity strategy is an indispensable instrument. And the SALTO Resource Center, in its more than 20 years of activity now, has been developing over time its vision and mission on inclusion through numerous activities, trainings, studies, seminars, discussions, and gradually through that activity patterns appeared on how to make inclusion successful as a feature of the programs. What were the do's and the don'ts? What were success stories, failures, pitfalls? And this resulted, after a couple of years, in the first inclusion strategy of the youth programs. It's more than 15 years ago now, but it was done there in the first time. It was a first document carefully written in language and vocabulary that avoided to label young people and making them the problem, looking, however, at obstacles that they faced and how to overcome them, looking at ways to make transnational projects having a long-lasting impact in the lives of young people, making, as the Alderman rightly expressed, because one simple experience can make a real difference in an individual life. And today we have seen, as Sophia also explained very strongly, we have an inclusion and diversity strategy for the whole Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps programs, for all sectors involved and embed it more explicitly than ever before in the legal basis of the programs, endorsed by high-level decision-making in the Council, in the European Parliament and in the European Commission. And this actual inclusion and diversity strategy of today is still based on the basics of the first strategy in the youth field, and I believe that this is something to be really proud of. So a lot of good reason to start with this forum without hesitation, and to make sure that inclusion and diversity becomes a successful feature for the whole program, and that it remains a successful feature in the youth field. So let's start, but not without thanking you for your attention, and not without thanking and already congratulating my colleagues from the SALTO Resource Center, from the coordination team of the forum, the facilitators and the rapporteurs, and all others contributing to the success of this event. Thanks again, and good luck for the coming days.
Thank you, Director Lambert. We also have a question for you. Because you have shared with us, I think, probably two very important achievements of the past of past period. So one, of course, is that we can stand here today and actually have such an inclusion and diversity strategy as we have right now. The other, you also mentioned, very important, is that actually we can see and showcase that young people with fewer opportunities have had access to programs, have participated, have made it. So if I ask you now from a more personal perspective to look back at the 7-8 years of the past program period, is there any additional achievement, some concrete project action, something that stands out for you from your work that you would like to share with us?
Yes, it's not only the last 7-8 years, but I certainly would like to mention the pleasure I had together with the colleagues, to develop the work and the ideas and the vision of the SALTO Resource Center over the years, because we have been starting that more than 20 years ago, yes. Some people still remember. It was a pleasure to have the opportunity to develop that vision. I think we managed to do that, because in the beginning it was not so easy. Because inclusion and diverse, it was only inclusion in the beginning, and that's such a vast territory on how to start and how to develop ideas in that respect, and making things operational, because I was very grateful with what Sophia Waterschoot said about our work being very useful in making the big principles operational in a real context, and this is something that I enjoyed very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. With this, we have come to the final moment of this first opening part of our Inclusion and Diversity Forum 2021. I can invite you off stage. Thank you very much.